picks for now week 15 of the NFL season. Of course, we did the Saturday games yesterday. We've got to move on now into the Sunday games. The Baltimore Ravens 7-6, 3-4 on the road. Travel to Cleveland to play the Browns, who are 0-13, 0-7 at home. Injuries first for visiting Ravens. All listed as questionable. Maurice Kennedy, cornerback. Ryan Mallett, quarterback. Za'Darius Smith, linebacker. Ryan Jensen, guard. Jermaine Alemanor, guard. For the Cleveland Browns, Jamar Taylor, cornerback. Matt Hazel, wide receiver, are questionable. Brian Bodie Calhoun, safety. With Baltimore, when they run the ball, they're very effective. They had a nice week last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive side of the ball. The defense did not necessarily live up to the billing. Collins was running the ball very well. Joe Flacco was making some plays downfield. Let's see if they can get Mike Wallace more involved. I'm assuming the Browns are going to stick with DeShone Kizer at this point. I don't know how much it matters. Kizer has clearly shown rookie mistakes. Again, you're putting a guy who was not that polished coming in behind that talent in the Browns offense. You'd have to assume that things like this year are going to happen. 9 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. He's thrown a lot of bad interceptions. I expect it again in this one. Baltimore needs the game too much at 7-6. Still fighting, of course, for that last wild card spot. And the Cleveland Browns at 0-13. Honestly, at this point, I think they will go 0-16. It's really just gotten that bad for them. So I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens in this game. Pretty easy game. I like 24-10. Again, the Cleveland Browns do not find the end zone. The Miami Dolphins 6-7, 2-4 on the road, travel to Buffalo to play the Bills, who are 7-6, 5-2 at home. Big playoff implications with this game. Miami, you would say, has to have it. So does Buffalo, but I think you can get in at 9-7. So Miami, if they win, they certainly really up their chances. Injuries for the visiting Dolphins. Matt Moore, quarterback. Corderia Tankersley, cornerback, are doubtful. Xavier Howard, cornerback. Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle, are questionable. Jermon Bushrod, guard, is out. For the Buffalo Bills, Jordan Matthews, wide receiver. Cordy Glenn, offensive tackle, are injury reserve outs. John Miller, guard. Nathan Peterman, quarterback, are out. Kelvin Benjamin, wide receiver, is questionable. I don't know if Tyrod Taylor is going to be able to go. If not, they're turning to Joe Webb, the Buffalo Bills, that is. Joe Webb is a wide receiver who can throw passes. He's been a quarterback before, but he's essentially had to move to the wide receiver position because he's just not that polished as a quarterback. If that's the case, Buffalo is going to run the ball almost exclusively. I would expect very little passing in this one. I'd like to see if Tyrod Taylor is going to be able to go. Of course, Buffalo runs the ball a ton to begin with. LaShawn McCoy really starting to come on. But if you have Joe Webb, you would look for just all running all the time, and I'd wonder how much that'll affect them, especially with the offensive line injuries. Jay Cutler, will he make mistakes against what's a good Buffalo secondary? Buffalo has been good at home this year. I expect that to continue, but you just never know with the Buffalo Bills. I'm taking a score of 17-13. I think their defense will stand up, and they're running the ball regardless of who is playing quarterback, and they come away with the victory. The Cincinnati Bengals, 5-8, 2-4 on the road, travel to Minnesota to play the Vikings, who are 10-3, 5-1 at home. Injuries for the visiting Bengals. Drake Kirkpatrick, cornerback. Joe Mixon, running back, are out. TJ Johnson, center, and Kevin Minter, linebacker, are injury reserve outs. Sean Williams, safety, is questionable. For the Minnesota Vikings, Blake Bell, a tight end, is an injury reserve out. Mackenzie Alexander, cornerback, is out. Riley Reef, offensive tackle, doubtful. Emmanuel Lamore and Kyle Rudolph, tight end, are questionable. Minnesota comes off that loss against the Carolina Panthers last week. Cincinnati, of course, has been a down year. I think that Pittsburgh loss killed them. Essentially, they really are probably just completely on the winds out of their sails. I'm not expecting much from them. Was Case Keenum maybe exposed a little bit against Carolina? We'll have to see. This will be a nice bounce-back game. A Cincinnati team, that is, that's not really playing for any, doesn't really have that much motivation, has some injuries, especially to the defensive side of the ball. Adam Jones wasn't even listed. He's not playing. I expect it to be pretty easy for the Minnesota Vikings. Look for them to continue to get Latavius Murray going and really pound the rock in this game, even though Cincinnati has a good defensive line. That's one of the areas that has never really failed them. I expect enough. Case Keenum will bounce back, and they're going to spit the bad taste out of their mouth from that loss to the Carolina Panthers, and the Minnesota Vikings come away with the victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, who I don't think are going to put up much resistance. I like a 27-13 final.